Hi, my name is Morgan Mason, and I am a professional learning specialist here at Keep Indiana Learning. This is part 2 of a 3-part video series called Small Shifts for Big Impact on Your Reading Instruction. If you missed part 1, no big deal. Just go to our Keep Indiana Learning YouTube page to check it out. You don't need to see the first video to be able to participate today, but definitely check it out because there are a lot of great things in all the videos. So this series is, like I said, a 3-part video series. Part 2, we are going to focus on small shifts in the materials that you use. So what I found is that in the work that I've done, in the conversations I've had over the past year or so about the science of reading and all of these shifts that we are making in education, it can be super overwhelming. So my goal for this video series is that you leave here feeling refreshed and encouraged that, hey, I'm doing a lot of great things already, but maybe there's some small shifts that I can make to better align with the research and what we know about how the brain learns to read. And some of the stuff you're probably already doing, and it's not going to require a lot of extra work or a lot of extra effort to make these modifications better serve your students. So let's jump right into small shifts in the materials that you use. All right, so something that comes up so often in my conversations with teachers, coaches, and administrators is they have all these pattern books, they have all these leveled books, and they're like, what am I supposed to do? Just not use these books anymore? I don't want to just throw out all of these resources. And my answer is always, don't throw anything away. We don't want to throw anything away, but we do want to think about how we are using these resources. So the first shift that I want to talk about in the books that you are giving your students or using in your teaching, I want you to think about reducing, reusing, or recycling. Specifically, in this example, we're going to talk about pattern books. So reducing would mean that you're just using fewer texts that require students to rely on the pictures and the context in order to figure out what the word is. So we know at this point that that's not best practice, that that's not the best way to teach the students. They need that explicit instruction in decoding, but that doesn't mean that you're just going to throw them all away. Just reduce how many of those texts that you are offering to students. Reusing, again, you're not using them to teach students how to decode words, but you could use, especially low-level books like those level A books, those level B books, use them to teach a different concept. Like maybe you have a student that comes in that's really struggling with just concepts of print. So use those books for that purpose. Kindergarten classes, I know kindergartners come in with everyone has a completely different set of skills and experiences. So you may have students that would benefit from using those books, not for the purpose that you used to use them for, but for concepts of print or things like that, where they can still practice some different skills using those books. And then the last thing is recycling some. So there may be some texts that you want to thoughtfully consider recycling or getting rid of because they don't fit a purpose or they are not needed in your classroom. So that's okay too. But rather than just recycling them all, throwing them all away, think about how you can reduce and reuse before getting to that step. And the next shift that I want to talk about is honoring that there are multiple ways to interact. So similar to what I said before about using level A or B books to talk about concepts of print, there are many other ways to interact with books that doesn't require them to use that 3 cueing system that we are trying to steer away from. They could explore the pictures. They could talk with a partner about the book. And maybe it's a read aloud that you did in class and then they're talking about it later. They could write or draw pictures about the book. And then obviously they can read the words. Now, I'm thinking about books specifically that if students have a collection of their own, maybe they have a book bag that they keep in their desk. Maybe they have you've given them guidelines on how to choose books to read. But I would just encourage you to incorporate different ways to interact with books rather than just reading the words, because especially for our kiddos that are still learning to read and still have those basic decoding skills, yes, you're working with them on that, maybe with a decodable text or a decodable passage. I'm sorry. They might not be ready for some books, but that doesn't mean that they can't interact with them at all. So encouraging them to interact with them in different ways, I think, is going to make a big difference in how they feel as they go on this journey. And the last shift, and this is one that as a teacher can be hard, but I remember when I was in the classroom, I would tell students like, hey, you're at a level F. You're going to go pick 7 new level F books from the F basket. And I wanted them to have that choice. But we don't want to offer endless options for students. We want them to have some student choice, but we also want the text to be aligned with where they are at in their phonetic development. So what I would encourage you to do, and again, this is a small shift, it doesn't require a lot of extra planning, is I would use small group instruction time, or maybe it's even when they're all working independently and you can work one-on-one with a student, but offer them selection. So you might say, look, I have these 7 books available, and you know in your head that you've chosen books that are right where they need to be, and the skills that they are working on individually, and then you let them choose 3 to put in their bag. So again, you're offering them options, and they are getting that choice and that ownership, but you are guiding them to make sure that the text aligns well with where they're at in their development as a reader. All right, so quick review. The first shift that we talked about is reducing, reusing, and recycling your current classroom books. So again, just taking a critical look at how you're using the books that are in your library, not just getting rid of all level books that you've ever used in the past, but how can you use them in a different way. And then honoring multiple ways to interact with a book. So teaching your students different ways to interact with a book, even if it's not a book that they are necessarily ready to read on their own independently, because they may still be lacking some of those skills. And then the third is to offer options, but not endless choice when it comes to reading. So don't give them free reign to the whole classroom library, but giving them some parameters and some choice, but also guiding them along the way to help with their development. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining. If you are interested in connecting with me, if you have questions, if you're looking for a thought partner, please reach out to me via email. I will also be hosting a workshop in December that kind of takes what I've been talking about in these videos one step further. My hope is that whoever attends this workshop will leave with a whole new toolbox of strategies to support phonics and phonemic awareness instruction, specifically in grades K through 2, but I know that it would benefit even the upper grades, especially those students that may still be struggling with a lack of phonics skills. So I hope you can join me for that workshop, and I will see you back here for part 3 of our series.